Good evening and welcome to another edition of the HCC Experience. It's an opportunity for us to talk to the local community about some of the exciting things that are happening at Hutchinson Community College, and also to introduce you to some of the personalities that we have on campus that really make things happen. This evening's guest is Steve Sears. Steve Sears is an ag instructor at Hutchinson Community College and has just shared with me 34 years, Steve.
That's true.
At Hutchinson Community College, and certainly over that period of time you've seen a great deal of change in the college and certainly in your area as well. Ag has been something that probably has had more dramatic change in it than any other curriculum that I can possibly imagine.
That's true. You look at today's farmer and, you know, $450,000 for a combine and $300,000 for a tractor, and the technology that's going into those equipment and the seed changes, $300 for a bag of seed corn, and the technology that's built into a seed today. We're having lots and lots of changes in fertilizer, and it's an exciting area.
It's really been unique as far as the changes that you've been a part of, in that when you first came here, we certainly had the farm down South Campus, but the farm was really something that Pioneer Seed operated and planted and raised. They're looking at hybrid wheat.
They were, and you know, you look. I'm not sure it was a good plan for Pioneer. They decided to abandon the hard red winter wheat development at that time, and decided to put all their money into corn because there's more money in corn development. But I think anytime we lose that diversity, we're losing something valuable. And Pioneer had some really quality wheats, and we lost that. We did gain a facility when Pioneer vacated that building in the greenhouses, some machinery storage. We were able to attain that for our agriculture area. So we gained something from it, but I was sorry to see Pioneer back away from the hard red winter wheat.
Kind of rolling back the clock, what did our students gain from Pioneer being down there and having that experimental facility and raising that hybrid seed? And I guess another question, did they ever actually put that hybrid seed into production?
There was a company that did hybrid seed. That Pioneer didn't ever do that. You know, most farmers still want to be able to keep their wheat seed back every year, so they don't like the idea of hybrid wheat, and it didn't have enough yield boost to justify buying the seed every year, so it didn't work for them. It was a great resource for us. We always took a field trip through the Pioneer Seed Company, and we got to talk to wheat breeders. You got to talk to the bakery people and the qualities that need to go into hard red winter wheat. And then we also, for the use of our land, they were giving us scholarship money and from the use of the land to go into agriculture scholarships. So we did lose a resource, but we did gain back the use of our land, and hopefully I'll make more than $7,000 this year that Pioneer was giving us.
You know, Steve, when you look at, you mentioned hybrid wheat and not being able to save the seed. You're an agronomy instructor, and you know all of that.
Yeah.
Kind of tell our viewers about why you can't save the seed from a hybrid production.
Yeah, you look at.
We might talk about what a hybrid is.
Sure.
How they got to that point, and then why you can't use the seed in the following year.
Yeah, when you think about corn is a hybrid seed, and you do have to buy the seed every year, and it's because when they developed the seed, they actually inbred 2 lines. They inbred that seed for about 7 generations to make a highly homozygous plant, and so all the alleles match up on both of those parental lines. And then when you cross them, you get hybrid vigor, because now at each one of those gene locations you have you know, a positive or a dominant and recessive allele. And so if you would try to keep that seed back, now when you cross those two, the recessive alleles start to get back together again, and now you have plants. You'd have tall plants and short plants and long ears and short ears, and it'd be very ragged out there if you tried to keep that hybrid seed back.
So it really denigrates the result.
It really does. The hybrid, the first year, hybrids work very well, and everything matches up where there's at least one dominant allele at each one of those gene locations, and so the corn looks great for 1 year.
You know, I can never remember a time when there hasn't been hybrid corn and hybrid milo. You know, that's just kind of been what we've lived with. Can you roll back the clock
I,
at all and see
I
before?
can, that's funny, and I grew up in Iowa on an Iowa farm, and you look in the 40s is when we had what we call open pollinated corn, and hybrids start coming. And hybrids actually doubled your yields, where most farmers at that time were happy with 50 or 60 bushel yields. All at once we doubled that yield by having hybrid corn. And I remember an uncle, he was going to keep back his open pollinated corn because he was sure as soon as the seed companies got hybrids that they would raise the prices where you wouldn't be able to afford it. So he kept his own line going for years and years because he was scared of those seed companies.
So the reason hybrid seed didn't work was basically they couldn't show that increase in yield from 60 to 120 bushel. Or,
on wheat, yeah. Where corn, it did give you that great increase, enough to pay for the genetics that you're paying for in the bag. So corn, it worked very well. Milo is hybrid, but wheat and soybeans, we're still using varieties.
When you soybeans as well, there's not a hybrid on soybeans.
That's true.
When you look at the recent issue we've had as far as seed wheat and certified seed wheat and people selling seed wheat, kind of explain to us that controversy that's around there. If Farmer Jones had a great crop and he put 1,200 bushel into his bin and he just needed maybe 300 bushel, he can't sell that seed wheat, can he?
No, he can't. That's kind of trying to sell it brown bag. And you look at seed development and you start out with foundation seed, then you go registered, and then you go certified, and each year it goes down by one notch. And what you're buying when you buy certified seed, you're buying seed of a known quality. You know what you're buying. But it is a patented seed, and if you try to raise Everseed and sell it to your neighbor as Everseed, you are breaking the law, because someone put 10 years of research and work into developing that seed, so they need to get a return on their money. And if you brown bag it to your neighbor, you can use it yourself, without any
So
problems.
there's not a penalty for using
No, you can use your
Farmer
own.
Jones just going ahead and using it for his own operation.
But you just can't sell it to someone else and represent it as a known variety. And so it's the Plant Protection Variety Act is the law.
So if I go out and buy certified wheat seed and plant it this fall, how many years can I continue saving that wheat for the next year? How long before it's become compromised and denigrated to the point that I've really got to go back to certified again?
Well, every farmer would disagree on that. I would feel like 2 years after certification, after certified wheat, you start counting how many years you've been out of certification. That third year you ought to be going back and buying new seed, because it already is showing degradation, especially diseases start to come in more quickly on that seed that you're keeping back.
We talked a lot about seed and seed production. One of the topics that's kind of a hot topic in Iowa is the drought-resistant corn that's being produced by some seed companies, and I guess that seed is a little bit more expensive than typical, and they have to recoup their research costs on it. Is that going to be something we take a look at really in Kansas? Because I know maybe 3 or 4 years ago there was quite a bit of dryland corn planted, and there were mixed results. Some did quite well, some didn't, and this past year probably not very many people did real well, depending on when you planted it. Is that drought-resistant strain something that you're going to see more of, and perhaps see corn edging out wheat in some cases as far as a cash crop?
Oh, I really think it'll go the other way. Drought-tolerant corn is being tried in Kansas and in Iowa. You look and it'll give you about a 7% increase by growing the drought-tolerant gene instead of the normal one. To me, 7% is not much. If you were talking 50%, then we would have something that would revolutionize corn. But corn's a plant that needs a lot of water. They are trying to reduce the size of the stoma under the leaves, is how they're trying to do their drought tolerance. I don't know. I don't think the increase that we're getting out of the drought-tolerant corn, at least right now, is probably not going to change much. In 20 years, yeah, but not right now. Monsanto has come out with Drought Guard, and DuPont Pioneer has come out with Aquamax, is what they call theirs. K-State's doing a lot of research with those drought-tolerant corn. They're looking at fertility. Does it change? But I don't know. I don't think it's. I don't. You know, to me, I think as we get, our Ogallala aquifer is going down every year. I think we're going to have to go back to irrigating wheat and irrigating milo and alfalfa. I think we need to look at going to other crops than corn. And the dry, we have tried some dry season corn as a replacement for a milo. Last 2 years here in Reno County, we swathed and baled that corn, and it didn't hang on. So maybe in the future.
Well, you talk about maybe providing some benefits if there's a drought year. What if it's not a drought year? What if you have a year when you have normal or maybe even more moisture than you might anticipate? What kind of, does that diminish completely the value of that drought-resistant seed?
In milo it does. If you've got a very drought-tolerant milo, it does not give you that high yield potential. You're giving up something when you grow it. Now corn, they're saying that that's not true, that they're not giving up the high-end yield for the drought tolerance. So I guess the jury's still out. I think we are going through climate change, and I think we are going to see more drought years. We're going to see more flood years. And so, when you look at genetic resistance, BT corn was one that was fairly relatively easy. You could put in one gene that would stop the European corn borer on corn. But when you look at climate is so complicated. Are you talking early drought? Are you talking mid-season drought, late drought? It's not going to be an easy fix for solving the climate issues. Where you look at an insect or a disease, you can solve those problems more readily.
So if you look at a climate issue, I think what you mentioned is really important as to what stage the drought really did impact on the plant.
Yeah.
Was it early, late, mid part of the process? That's a real consideration because each one will have a different impact.
It does. Last year our crops really were more drought-stricken than this summer, and it's because of the timeliness of the rains. We did get some half-inch rains that really did help our fall crops this year better than last year. But climate is very, very complicated.
When you look at wheat, our wheat didn't do that badly.
No, we had 55 bushel wheat on the school farm.
And back in the day, that would have been a very good yield.
I think it was this year, yeah.
Especially with the price being what it is.
Yeah.
But again, I think what you talked about was timely rains.
It was.
Not true volume of rain, but having the rain at an appropriate time during that life cycle of that crop.
Yeah, like soybeans, you need to catch one rain during August and to get a good bean crop, and for dryland beans. And in Kansas, that's kind of hard to come by, is to get that rain during August. And so, yeah, it's not the total amount of moisture, it's when that moisture comes.
When you look at climate change, I think that's something really important for us to realize is taking place, and maybe it's been dramatized by the drought we've experienced the last couple of years. What kind of crops do you see being planted in the next 10 years to try to compensate for that climate change? I guess the climate change that we would see here would probably be a warmer climate, maybe a longer growing season, perhaps less moisture, maybe having a climate closer to what the panhandle of Texas used to be.
Yeah, it's odd because our country, corn is king and soybeans are second, and so all the research, all the money is going towards corn and beans, and all the herbicides, the fertilizer, the drought tolerance, everything is directed at those two crops, where we really ought to be looking at wheat, sorghum, and alfalfa. We ought to be getting them drought tolerant and learning how to grow what's adapted. Even the switchgrass down in Southwest Kansas are looking as a, using it for ethanol. Switchgrass is very adapted to Kansas, and so, I think our industry is trying to push profit where we're going to have to come to the reality that you have to live where you are, and one thing you don't change is climate.
Milo was one of the first real hybrids that was utilized, and of course it was taking an African Capricorn type of product and making it a hybrid, and that was heat resistance and drought tolerant.
Yeah.
And you're seeing this past fall, I've seen some very nice looking fields of dryland Milo. And again, I think what you talked about was the timeliness of the rain.
Oh.
Just around here, there have been several nice fields of that kind of.
Yeah, it was all based on planting dates, on when you planted the Milo. This year, the later planted Milo around, June 17th, 18th, actually yielded better than the early planted Milo, so it was around that date. A lot of farmers have tried to get away from Milo because they don't like the shatter cane and the Johnson grass. They seem to have trouble with those weeds, and so they have tried to go to corn. And there are areas that corn works very well. I'm kind of slanted. The southern part of Reno County is, of course, more drought, and I have one crop consultant. He's from the Mound Ridge area, and the dryland corn works very well for them. So it is very site-specific on the crops that you ought to grow.
Steve, let's take a brief break and talk about more about the ag program at Hutchinson Community College, and we'll be back after taking a look at some other programs that we have at Hutchinson Community College. Welcome back to the HCC Experience. I'm Ed Berger, president of Hutchinson Community College, and our guest this evening is Steve Sears. Steve is an agronomy instructor at Hutchinson Community College and has really been a part of much of the change. And we talked about our farm on South Campus. That is something that we have had a part of our institution probably since about 1971, operated by Pioneer Seed for a number of years, and in the early 90s why the college took over operation of that, and much of that, the donation of the Pioneer facility and greenhouse and all was part of the work of Steve Sears. Steve worked very hard with Pioneer and was able to convince them that that would be something very positive for them to do. So we appreciate that, and certainly all the role that you've had in the ag program at Hutchinson Community College for over the years. Something that you've advocated for it forever, and certainly that we've talked about is, one side certainly is the hybrids and the seed. Another is the practice, the planting practices, and also the soil conservation practices. Back in the day when you talk about soil conservation, you were typically talking about terracing a field and putting in waterways and trying to keep that soil from eroding in that fashion. And you're talking about a no-till approach and how that might do a great deal to conserve not only erosion from the standpoint of water, but also wind and conservation of water.
That's for sure. We now are at about 50% of the farmers that are conventional tillage, and about 50% that are minimum are no-till. And so I think we're making advancements there, and I really believe that we ought to be in the minimum tillage and no-till area. If not anything else, just soil conservation. You've been given a natural resource, and it's very slowly renewable, so you need to protect that natural resource. And I think just doing a better job of leaving some residue on the surface will not only keep the erosion from from happening, but save the moisture we've just been talking about. You know, water is a gift to us, and how are you going to use that gift that's been given to you?
Steve, you know, I'm kind of an old guy, and you can tell me fact or myth. I'm going to moldboard plow everything because I can plow that residue right into the soil. That will cause that soil to be fertile. It'll cause it to be greater humus in that soil and cause me to have better crops the following year. And my gosh, that looks so nice when I've got that straw all plowed under it, nice and black.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't have to come back and disc it. I can probably, you know, hope for a rain or two, maybe a little crop of volunteer, spring tooth it once or twice, and drill my wheat. I don't have to be out there all the time. I don't have to use any chemicals.
Don't have to.
Life is good, and I'm really happy.
Hey, I grew up that way. In Iowa, we would actually disc the corn stalks first, so we got the field level, and then we would plow it, so it'd plow it all level. We would disc it twice, usually lapping half. So, and then, you know, my first job was on a B John Deere with a spike tooth harrow. And after we disc it, we harrowed it and harrowed it. And then if there was any little clods left, we would use a cultipacker and we would flatten all those clods to make sure that we had a garden. You know, we wanted to plant into a garden soil. And so, you know, my dad calls me a trash farmer because, you know, he wants that clean field and that field. And there is something to a farmer going out, and they like that time in the tractor to be able to think and to think about their operation. They like that time in the tractor and spending those times. But I think we do have to rethink. You know, we're no longer using horses, and I think you do have to finally come to the place where you say, you know, maybe plowing everything every year is not the best way to go. I think we had a dust storm just, you know, a week ago that ought to remind us that all you have to have is bare soil and wind and dry weather, and we can go right back to the Dust Bowl with not too much time. So I do think we have to rethink what feels good. I mean, I went out to my, you know, when I plant fields, if I have 3 different kinds of residue right now on my fields. I have bean stubble from this year, I have wheat from the year before, and I have milo stubble from the year before that. To me, that's the perfect place to plant a seed. And so it's, you just have to completely redo your head.
So is there any issue as far as disease when you have that much residue? Is that something that is something the farmer needs to be aware of when you're using a no-till approach?
Yeah, and that's one problem that there are places where no-till and residue doesn't work. One is if you're in continuous wheat, or heavy soils. Really, clay soils are difficult to do this plan with. So I have to rotate. Some people double stack. They will go wheat, wheat, you know, milo, milo, and, you know, maybe dryland corn, dryland corn. I have to rotate every year to avoid weeds and diseases. So every field will have a different crop every year. So I avoid those disease problems.
You know, when you look at having the same crop in year in, year out, some of the issues are certainly weeds that you mentioned. You have cheat has been for wheat is certainly something of a problem. And even when you come back with corn too frequently, you have rogue plants coming up.
You do, yeah. And so those are issues that you have to solve. And crop rotation solves a multiple of problems.
You know, there's a whole new concept in farming, and certainly we are, I think, in the vanguard of that. It's something called precision farming. And I know we just received a grant from, in cooperation with Fort Hays, and you certainly had a strong role in making that a reality. Talk about precision farming, how it's different from what perhaps we did when I was on the farm, and how important that is to go in that direction.
Yeah, we just received a grant. Fort Hays and ourselves received a grant for $277,000. HCC's part was $92,000 to improve our precision agriculture presence. Fort Hays State actually picked us from all the community colleges because they knew we had already made a step in that direction. On our John Deere 8100, we put auto steer on it and GPS system, And we are now laying down fertilizer on strips, and then we're planting right on those strips to give us a higher efficiency, you know, in location of fertilizer, and the plant being in close proximity to that fertilizer. Well, precision ag, you know, is a lot of expense. It'll take another $10,000 on a combine to add that feature. We spent $10,000 to put it on our system, and a question comes, does it pay? Well, probably for larger farmers, they can pencil that out easier than a small farm could. But I had one large farmer tell me, he says, I feel like I paid for my system in 1 year, because when he's combining all these different hybrids that he has planted. And that yield monitor is there constantly looking him in the face, and he knows what hybrid is doing better than the others. So the next year he can choose the proper one, and he feels like making those good choices for the next year, that information base is worth the $10,000 that he spent on that system.
Does that mean that I've got to have my own combine? I can't have a custom harvester come in and do it then?
Oh, your custom harvesters have all of those systems on their combines too. And
so it doesn't have to be linked into what you've done as far as your plantings or anything?
No, well, no, Harvest would not. And they will give you, your custom harvester will give you the maps, the yield maps that they have generated, and through a flash drive. They will just transfer that information to you. So now you could still use a custom harvester and get that information. If you're doing the planting and the fertilizer, well, I even have one person, though, put fertilizer down for me. We don't have the equipment to do that. And then we plant right on those strips, because, you know, once you lay down an AB line, it is straight with the line that he was there. And so you don't have to have the same systems to go with multiple operations.
So you have a savings.
You do.
You have a savings in product, perhaps better direct application.
Yeah, I think a good example of precision agriculture is ag lime. We now are going to be able to go to grid soil sampling, where you make equidistant points throughout a field, and you take the soil samples from there, and then you make zones with those areas of the field that are similar, and then you apply lime according to those zones. So one end of the field may need lots of lime, and the other field just a small amount. So you're using your lime dollar, you know, a lot more efficiently, because you're putting it where it needs to be. The other one that works very well is on a circle, irrigation circle, having that tractor, you're planting seed. When you're within the circle, higher population, as soon as it hits that line where it's no longer going to be watered, it goes to a lower population. And the farmer doesn't have to do anything. It automatically is making those changes, as you're going through the field.
Steve, it's been really great to have you as a guest on the Hutchinson Community College HCC Experience. Talk to our viewers a little bit about contact information for agriculture at Hutchinson Community College. I know we have a lot of great students from Reno County and all of Kansas. Give us your contact information, and if they want to find more about the ag program, who they would call.
Yeah, I do need to tell you that we have 3 parts to our ag program. We have transfer agriculture, which they will go here and then they'll go to K-State or Fort Hays to finish their last 2 years. We have an ag diesel program that is a vocational program where they can either get 1 year as a certificate or 2 years as an associate degree. And then we have farm and ranch management that is also a 2-year applied science degree in agriculture. Of course, we're on the web. If you go just to our normal website of hutchcc.edu and then go to agriculture, we have a web presence there. You could also call us. I would be more in the farm and ranch. You could talk to Ben Williams in the transfer agriculture. Dale Connard or Wes Anns would be in our ag diesel program. So if you just call our main phone number, 665-3500, and then you could ask for the agriculture people, and they would be able to find us.
Very good. Steve, thank you for joining us, and we also, of course, thank our viewers for being with us this evening on the HCC Experience. We hope to see you again next week.